And if I can introduce next David Bridle, who is the editor of Boys and Dirty Boys magazines. Thank you very much indeed, David.
Thank you, Miles. And Miles, of course, is our lawyer for Dirty Boys magazine, which I'm always very grateful for. I'm going to read, if you don't mind, from my notes. The impact of these rules mean that the ability of young lesbian and gay, bisexual and trans people to access education, information, advice and knowledge about their sexuality will be directly affected by this law. Many young gay people, LGBT people, use sites like Twitter, Tumblr and Snapchat as their way of coming to terms with their sexuality, slowly discovering and exploring. The plan is to include such sites as these under the verification rules. What about Gay Men Fighting AIDS or the Terence Higgins Trust with their information on keeping people safe from HIV? Are those kind of education sites going to be affected by these rules if they have a picture of somebody putting a condom on, for instance, which is very important education? The LGBT community, and gay men in particular, have suffered disproportionately from our draconian obscenity and sex laws. In 2012, Simon Walsh had his life turned upside down, openly gay barrister who lost his job with the Mayor of London after tabloid stories, but who was eventually found by a wise jury to be not guilty of possessing extreme pornography. And those wise 12 good men on that jury decided that the images that the CPS and police were prosecuting him on, which were things like sounding and fisting images, were not actually obscene. The same with Michael Peacock in front of us, the gay escort, who was found not guilty of distributing gay pornography DVDs of S&M fisting water sports. But I want to make one very simple point about fisting and water sports, two of these things which are highly illegal under British law, but actually both of which from an HIV perspective are entirely safe from HIV. So essentially what we're doing is we are stopping young gay men from learning and seeing about the very things which could keep them safe from HIV. I think it's time for a grown-up debate in the UK, and I think it's time for the police, the CPS and the government to start treating us as the sexually mature adults that we are. Society will gain.
Thank you very much indeed, David. If you could give the microphone to the next speaker, who is Laura Watson from the English Collective of Prostitutes. Laura Watson, everyone.
Thank you very much for having us. I'm going to read as well because this is a collective effort, so I can't remember everyone's points. So just for those of you that don't know us, we are sex workers working in all areas of the sex industry, campaigning for decriminalisation and the removal of the prostitution laws. And like sex workers all over the world, we're fighting for the right to work, but also the right not to work in the sex industry if we don't want to. We want labour rights, including occupational health and safety rights, but we also fight for alternatives, so against the cuts and for alternatives and resources so that any of us can leave if and when we want to. So we're delighted to be here, thank you for having us, and we support the campaign against the Digital Economy Bill, which, as has been said, is going through Parliament at the moment. And this campaign we definitely see as part of our struggle as sex workers, because the bill would basically put the power into the hands of the bosses, away from independent filmmakers and performers. And this is exactly what the criminalisation of sex work does to sex workers, because we're pushed into the hands of exploitative bosses because it's not legal to set up your own place or work where you want to work, because we can't work collectively with others. This bill also increases surveillance on clients by demanding that clients have to give particular details about themselves, which most will not want to do. And why do they need all this information anyway, as has already been said? Again, putting the independent filmmakers and performers more at risk, because it's them who are going to go out of business. But in a similar vein, some MPs, particularly women MPs who call themselves feminists want to criminalise sex workers' clients. And not only, we're against this completely, not only will it impact sex workers financially, it will also, worse than that, make it much more dangerous for sex workers to work and force us into isolation. So what we wanted to particularly focus on is, what are the women MPs saying about all this? Why aren't they interested in the fact that this is a bill going through and there are other proposals going through that put women also in particular into danger, into the power into the hands of bosses, and make the workers work longer for less money? Why don't they have anything to say about it? It's disgraceful. We've also seen that censorship, for example, there was a clampdown on the cards, sex workers' cards in phone boxes. It's just an occasion for racism, because the first cards that they go for are the migrant women or the women of colour. They take them off first, so it's just an occasion for them to target people of colour, and the feminists of course have nothing to say about it. They also have nothing to say about the fact that more women in particular are going into the sex industry because of benefit cuts and sanctions, and we are very concerned about that, but they have nothing to say about it. So they do not represent us, basically. And we just wanted to say also that you know, there are many bills going through, there are many pieces of legislation that are politically and economically repressive, especially at this time and this government, but even the last government really. And this bill is just a part of all of that. It's just a part of a repressive state, basically, which tries to undermine the relationships that the fight that we have to make relationships that we want and contact that we want with other people. That's what they're trying to stop. The anti-porn lobby has consistently said that anti-porn, that pornography is the theory and rape is the practice, and we say it's completely wrong. It's the other way around, and actually anti-porn is the theory and repression is the practice. I'm nearly finished. Wrapping up. So that's why we need decriminalisation. Just to say what we're working on at the moment, if anybody wants to get involved, we're an active group. We have a petition here which you can sign it online to decriminalise sex work for safety's sake. You may or may not know the Home Affairs Select Committee just came out in support of decriminalising sex workers, which we have to, as a movement, have to make sure that they stick to, and that they don't include the criminalisation of clients in those recommendations. We have an event next month if anyone is interested in that. Some of us are supporting Jeremy Corbyn because he has stood for decriminalisation and said, committed to society where we're not automatically criminalised for, and he's always worked on the side of workers. We also have a rights sheet for sex workers which outlines the laws, so if anyone wants to get involved, speak to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Laura Watson, from the English Collective of Prostitutes. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. And next up we have Guy Herbert from No to ID. Guy Herbert, everyone.
Hello everybody. Miles in his opening remarks said I was speaking in a personal capacity. I'll say this much in a personal capacity before I get on to my official position as General Secretary of No to ID, and that is that I personally am wholly in support of Pandora's and Miles's campaign for the complete revision of Britain's ramshackle and repressive sex laws. Speakers, as General Secretary of No to ID, I don't have any corporate position to offer on censorship. I don't care what you get up to at the weekend or what you do for work. What bothers me is the tying of individuals to a single identity, the collection of information about you while you're going about your lawful business. If you can forget the sexual context for a minute and just think about going out for a drink on a Saturday night. You might encounter somebody on the door who says, "ID please," and you say, "I don't need to show ID, I just need to prove that I'm over 18. "Oh no, you have to show ID because the